sometimes when we talk about the future, it's good to remember how we got to where we are now and what that history looks like. And where we've come from is someplace we might call the digital desert. So for a long time, we've had teachers and students in classrooms doing the work of learning, but we had a lot of people who wanted to know a little bit about what was going on in that classroom. And we really had no way of gathering that information. We had no way to tell are the students learning what we want them to learn. And we had a lot of technological constraints. So we had computers with less power than that's in our phones right now. We had some optical scanners, but we wanted to be able to assess a whole bunch of people. So we ended up with a lot of what we have now, fixed response kinds of items that we could easily score for a large range of people. And those constraints that were in place then are what lead us to where we are now. But now, those constraints are no longer there. We're in what we might call the digital ocean. We can gather data from students as they interact in digital learning environments that we can use to understand what they know and can do. Because of that, we can think differently about how we design the activities that we're having students do. We don't have to start from, oh, what data can we collect? How can we collect the data? We can start from thinking about what kinds of activities are meaningful and important for students to be engaged in, and then we can instrument those and collect data from them. This works as what we might think of as an activity cycle. So we can start off with students thinking about interacting with an activity, and then what is the meaningful information to collect from that? What are the patterns that we see in that information that are important for understanding how students are progressing? How do we then take information from lots of different sources? Maybe there's a homework system, maybe there's a game, maybe there's different pieces that we can all bring together to tell us where the student is. And then most importantly, what should we do next? And that's the big question that we can answer with this information, not just back into a computer system, but to help teachers and students and parents understand, here's where we think you are right now, here's what we can do next to improve. I want to emphasize that there's a lot of talk about big data and all of this great, interesting, cool stuff, but this is really still a human process. If we think about what data is, it's really just a record of the student's experience. We think about data analysis, that's really just understanding that experience. And then all of the other pieces, the interpretation, the communication of that information, the decisions and applications, those are all people. Those are all our teachers working in the classrooms with this information. So this isn't really a story just about data. It's about how students and teachers can interact with these new experiences. So because of this, we can start thinking about those really breaking down those barriers that we see. So is this curriculum or is this assessment? It's both. We're in the classrooms thinking about the students learning, going about their daily activity. We just happen to be capturing that information that we can then use in feedback and understand where students are and what they're doing. Is this a game or is this a test? How do those work? And they can look very similar to each other. So let me give you an example of this. You saw that part of what I work on is a collaboration called GlassLab, Games Learning and Assessment Lab. And this is a collaboration with Electronic Arts, the Institute of Play, ETS, and the research center that I'm in. And for instance, we just have released this game called Argubot Academy, Mars Generation 1. Students are on the first colony in Mars. So you can imagine, as Jamila was talking about earlier, lots of people have opinions about how this first colony should be. The question is, can we support those opinions with some facts? So students and players come into the game. They're in this first colony in Mars, and they need to engage in these debates. What kind of food should we have? Should we have pets on Mars? Students pick a side, and then as they navigate through the environment, collect evidence about their claims, that they can link up to support their claims. And what that does is actually we create little robots of arguments, and that little robot can go and battle with another robot, and that's really having a debate. And what happens is we can look at how do students rebut other students' arguments in that debate, how do they collect that evidence, And so it's not just that the students are having fun, which is important. They're also learning. We have lots of scaffolding in them, guiding them as they start playing the game about that evidence. But the big thing is we can also look at all of that information from their play. What are the things that they're collecting? What evidence did they choose to use to support their argument? And so we can look and say, okay, these are the things that the students are doing. This is where we think they are on the progression of learning argumentation skills. And those are really the important things that we want to be looking for. So we can have a student who's not just saying, as we were testing here, not just saying, oh, this is my opinion, but during our play test, we had a student, a girl who was going through and thinking about, well, we should have fish. Fish should be the primary source of protein on our new colony. And she went through and was collecting evidence, and all of a sudden she switched and decided to have a different kind of protein. And so we're watching, taking notes. We said, well, why did you do that? Why did you switch? And she said, well, it seemed like there was better evidence for the other side. We were like, oh my gosh, if we could get everyone using evidence to support their arguments, that would be great. But the big piece is we can look in there at their data as they're moving through and think about what they're learning. So there are a lot of potential sandbars in this digital ocean. We can think about a lot of potential things we need to be concerned about. Data privacy and security are two of those we don't want to ignore. But we think actually the biggest challenge is to not just do and recreate our current world with new technology, but to think about how can we really reinvent how we conceptualize the things that we're doing to take advantage of this digital first world. Thank you.